His mom I met at an AA meeting. It was just a hookup, and we ended up trying. We moved in together for a little while, or it turned into even worse. Because after prison, my head was on straight for the first time in a long time. I knew that I could do it. I could be his dad. I could take care of Elizabeth. I could do, what I needed to do in life. And then, just like out of the blue, one day he was gone.
Let's be honest about recovery.
The rewards, the challenges.
Let's talk about our failures.
We are flawed people, after all.
Let's challenge the stigmas that weigh us down.
Because while most of us are looked at,
Few of us are seen.
Let's talk about addiction.
And how Christ overcomes our weaknesses.
Because we are loved.
because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
We are loved.
We are
Because
loved.
we are loved.
My name is Mark Robertson, and
My name is Melissa Robertson.
we've been married for 7 years now. We both found ourselves addicted to drugs in life, and God pulled us out of that pit to start an amazing business that helps a lot of people. And we found ourselves in a very stressful situation, and I fell and had a relapse and made my way here to the home of grace, where I rebuilt my relationship with God and absolutely changed my life.
Hey there, and welcome back to Jesus Loves Addicts. If you're just joining us, I'm Kathryn, and this is Paul. Today we're going to be speaking with Mark and Melissa Robertson. They are from Covington, Louisiana. They've been married for right at 7 years, and they run a transition home that can hold up to 150 people. But it didn't always start there.
And where it starts is always such a dynamic part of the story, right? I mean, there's such variance in people's background. So where is your beginning? Where does that start?
Because he started a lot. I mean, I was 26 before I started using drugs.
Well, even before that, right? Like, where does home life? Let's
go there.
Let's jump all the way back.
Both of us had a very good home life.
Okay.
My mom was a teacher. My dad was a police officer.
Did you guys know each other as children? Oh, okay. You just know the background.
No, I just
okay.
know the background.
I got you.
So my mom was a teacher. My dad was a police officer. We went on vacation every summer. We went to private schools our whole life.
Yeah.
Graduated from college.
You got
had
siblings?
2 kids. I do have one little sister. She is 15 months younger than me. And when I'm not in my addiction, she's my best friend. When I am, she's my worst enemy. You know what I mean? There's no
I do
between
know.
her.
Both
There's
in
no
loving
between.
fashion, I'm
Yes,
assuming.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Mark, your beginning home life?
Yeah, I grew up, my dad owned an oil company. We were semi-spoiled growing up. At 15, everything changed when I got my driver's license. I started using very early in life, where she started kind of late. But my home life was beautiful.
Right. Do you have siblings? What was it like? Y'all all got along?
I have a little brother, and today he also had chose a life of drugs, but he's been sober for 7 years now. He actually came to Home of Grace too.
Hey.
That's awesome. Was your background at all exposed to it? Like, how did you turn 15? You're hanging out with people?
Oh, well, yes, at parties. And I had an uncle that I would steal marijuana from. He would leave it laying around, stuff like that.
Okay.
But really, it sounds like the peer group had a lot to do with
yeah. That's where I wanted to be bad. I saw the drug dealers, and I came from a family with preachers and business owners, and they were all successful. And so successful was normal to me.
Right.
This was something, partying and the drugs, I wanted to.
It attracted you.
It. Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah. And I got it.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think there's such a conversation there about just the nature of the flesh, right? Because I think there's a perception out there that if some of these kids could just have had a loving and good household, but the flesh just craves what the flesh craves. Yeah. And so at some point in life, unfortunately, Satan has a way of dropping some invitation in there that we unfortunately take, right? So, but it's interesting because you said you didn't grow up together, but yet your stories are quite similar. I mean, that you could.
So we met at Teen Challenge. The girls couldn't talk to the boys couldn't talk to the girls, right?
Yeah.
I knew who he was, he knew who I was. And he graduated, I left. And so when we didn't talk to each other, like at all, we weren't even Facebook friends. Didn't know who Mark Robertson was or what he was doing with his life. And then, unfortunately, let me tell you the whole story. His ex-girlfriend that I lived with at Teen Challenge, her mom called me and said she needed help. So I went and got her, and I brought her to the Grove. That's where I just finished treatment at. And I brought her there, and 2 weeks later, she calls me and tells me that Mark's son passed away. And Melissa, her name's Melissa as well, she needed to know. So I went over there and told her, and they wouldn't let her go to Mark's son's funeral unless I took her or her mom took her. Her mom could not get off of work, so I took Melissa to Mark's son's funeral. And weird enough, that's kind of where we reunited. A few weeks later, he started Facebook messaging. We kind of had some great ideas, same ideas. I just opened the first girls' house, and he was really interested in everything. And about 6 months later, I was like, come move down, we'll open a boys' house.
So you got into the ministry side of it pretty quickly, right after that.
It was all about that. Yeah, it was all about that.
And then we fell in love doing it.
All right, so we have leapfrogged over great quantities of the story here. So, and one tragic part of it that we will get to, and I did not know about that. So, all right. So let's reel it back in. We're growing up in really good homes, right? Good relationships with parents. No, that is, yeah. When does the peer group start to change? Is this high school?
In middle school, I remember my best friends changing. And I told Melissa this the other day because I had just saw T-Boy was my best friend all the way up until the 5th grade. And he was a good guy, still is. Went to the Air Force, never got in trouble. Well, in about the 6th grade, I had a new best friend. I don't want to say his name, but he came into my life, and his family let him party. They let him drink, and things started to change pretty quickly at that point.
Yeah. I'm sure I'm dating myself here, but the fact that this stuff starts so early is just still tragic to me, right? I'm of the ancient tribes where, it was usually late in high school that this stuff started to happen, or, so sad that it's as early as middle school. So, so you get this new best friend. Is he already involved in?
Yes, they're smoking weed. That's really mostly what it was. So I smoked weed for the first time in the 7th grade, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so about 12, 13. Yeah.
And was that an immediate, he's doing it, I'll do it? Like, hey, you want to try this?
I did it, and to be honest with you, the first time I did it, I was scared to death, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I kept
So you did it again?
I did it again. I was scared.
Would it be fair to say, though, because I'm so glad you mentioned that, just because I think people need to realize the nature of this, and I could be wrong, but I would guess that is the power of peer pressure. Yeah. Right? Scared to death, don't like it, but my peers are still doing it. I've got to save face here, and so... That's pretty much the story.
Did it again.
Yeah.
Until you liked it.
Yeah. And then it turned into more and more. LSD came on the scene. It didn't take long. I was a full-fledged cokehead at 16 years old. Like, I was buying it every day.
So your family?
Stealing from my family.
Did they say anything? Confront? What did that look like?
It took them a long time because of the amounts. I grew up with money.
Right.
They didn't notice, and at that point, my dad was in the oil field, so he was gone all the time. The way I lived, like, I would just go stay places and not come home, so they didn't see it till it got really bad.
So it was a good household, a loving household, but pretty loose reins.
Yes. Yeah. Very loose reins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you using with your brother at this time?
No, we did end up, he was more of an opiate person, and that's what got me into opiates. His ankle was destroyed in a car wreck. His addiction actually started from the doctor. He saw me on the drug. He didn't want to be...
Anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But still turned out, pills turned into even worse,
Yeah.
Sure. So cocaine by 16, when did the opiates come in for you? Is that later?
Right at 17, 16,
Okay.
17, not long after.
Okay.
So you finished high school?
No.
All right. What'd you do from
I was
there?
kicked out of high school for the distribution of marijuana in the 10th grade at my third high school in the 10th grade.
And your family knew something was up.
Yeah, I was in trouble. They didn't have any education on addiction. There was
On how to do
nobody
it.
in my family that knew anything about it. You know, there was some, but they're all hiding it, you know, on the side, the corners. But the immediate family, there was nothing, no education whatsoever.
Although your uncle also doing it, was he doing it to the extent that people would identify it as problematic, or was he?
Yeah, he was, but I didn't realize that until later on. Like before, he didn't start opening up to me until, you know, late, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
And they kind of just accepted that.
They accepted
There
the
wasn't a
uncle's
whole lot
use.
done.
He just smoked weed, and at that time they, snorted cocaine and stuff on the weekends.
Yeah.
But not out in the open with, children or anything.
But to Kathryn's point about, somebody knew then. I mean, you're in your third high school.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, were you getting at this point? Were you getting kind of feedback from your parents, like what in the world is going on? Was that were those relationships
I was
starting to
in
get
a lot of trouble. Cars taken away.
Okay.
I had also in the middle of this gotten a girl pregnant with twins. She ended up having a miscarriage at like 7 months. At that time, we had gotten in a fight. They took my car. I left there walking with a pregnant girlfriend, and her brother picked us up and helped us get on our feet. I mean, we're talking 16 years old. What am I going to do with my life?
Right.
The drugs actually did stop for those months. That was it, though. Once when it was over, I went right back to it.
Yeah.
So what are
Especially with losing the twins.
Yeah, it was really hard.
And that's very late.
When you talk about those months, you stayed sober while she was pregnant?
Yeah, so we planned our life like we were gonna do it. Like, we were. I got a job at Dan Chase Taxidermy, which is they make things to mount the deer on and everything. She was still in school, and we lived with one of her family members, and we didn't do drugs. We didn't drink. We came home and, prepared to have a child.
So at that young age, you guys get pregnant, you stop using, you're really starting to make family choices now. That had to be really traumatic to lose them in a miscarriage. Because, I mean, you're already plotting and planning your life.
And they took pictures like that. I had claw marks on my arm from her, like she was she thought I kept thinking I was going to leave right then. I mean, she knew, I wasn't ready to be. After it was over, I would say about 2 months later, I stayed another 2 months and left, and went back to my friend's house.
So still not your family's. Did you talk to your family at all during that time?
They came and brought some food during Thanksgiving. They came to inform me that I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving, and because of the way I was living, my grandfather's a Baptist minister. They did not accept once they knew about all this. Things started to change, but I had very little communication with them. Yeah.
So that's a different twist then. So you leave 2 months after the miscarriage. So was it a struggle for you? Like, I'm thinking that we're kind of happily planning family life, but I'm guessing now that there's two sides of you. You're going, now I got to do this. And it's like more of a, what am I going to do? Yeah. More of a panic situation at this age.
What have I got myself into? I'm looking around, and that family looked a lot different than the family I grew up in. So of course, financially and, stability, it was very different. So we had money saved up, and I left her half the money that we had saved and took the other half, and we didn't talk to each other. After that, I know she was very hurt, and my head was still spinning. And then I went straight to cocaine. I didn't give myself time to feel anything.
Okay. And then you just get to working because you're no longer in high school. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Or were you just using?
Oh, at that for that short amount of time, yes.
Just using?
Just using, yeah.
You didn't know how to handle the grief.
Okay, so you're well acquainted with this part of his story. So
All
you
of
guys,
it.
yeah.
But he didn't know how to handle the grief, so instead of in a healthy way, he just ran out and started using to cover up the pain, because that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
That's
Which
what we
only
do.
prolongs it, right? We think we're treating it, but we're really prolonging it because we never allow ourselves to go through it. So
We put it off. It just sits right there, and it's still going to have to be walked all the way through.
yeah. So in the other part of the world, very close by, you are going through high school. What did you said your drug use doesn't start until?
Yeah, I had really, really good high school years, like, and my parents did allow drinking, keys at the house. We partied, but it was in a very safe way. It was always watched, For my 18th birthday, my dad got a Hotard bus. And we went and ate somewhere because it was my sister's prom. So she went to the prom, and right by the daiquiri store was just a big old bus. And went and got a daiquiri because, I turned 18 and the drinking age back then was 18. And he's like, I dare you to go on that bus. The doors were open. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go on the bus. And, my dad just stared at me. And, all of my friends are on there, and they all yell, surprise. So there's gallons of daiquiris. There's kegs of beer. My mom's funneling a beer. My mom don't even drink. It was just a really good time. We get home at 4 o'clock in the morning. My sister done puked all over her prom dress. But it was great. It was great. There were no problems back then, right? It was just great. There weren't even...
there were problems.
There was problems.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't see the problems yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? You didn't see the problems.
They were wrapped in the definition of fun.
Yes, they absolutely
You
were.
didn't see them because there were no consequences for
No,
them.
there was no consequences, right?
Yeah.
So we go home, and that's just the way we did. I remember one time we were all at a bar. I was a little bit later. This is before the drugs came into the scene. And my mom got mad because me and my dad didn't want to leave, so she drove the car home and left. And me and my dad walked probably 3 miles home from the bar together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, I never had any drinking consequences. I've never had a DUI. I've never been arrested. None of that, right?
Right.
Let me ask you a question, though, because when we think of consequences, we think of, the obvious negative consequence. I wasn't getting DUIs. I'm not getting kicked out of school, this and that. But it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are clearly probably ahead of the game here. Are you out drinking friends? Right? I mean, your mom's leaving. You and your dad are staying at the bar an extra 3 hours. Are you finding yourself able to go longer?
With me.
So you're pacing yourself, but everybody's moving in that direction.
I'm not pacing myself, but neither are they. Let's put it that way. No, there was no pacing. But I could never drink, I would never drink days in a row, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It was like this once a week thing that we did, you know?
Okay.
And when you did it to get drunk and we're going to have a good time, but it was only once a week because we were very responsible, right? Whether I was in college, after that I was a police officer for a little while. First crack rock I ever bought was undercover as a police officer.
Oh, wow.
Before I did drugs.
So you became a police officer just like your dad?
Yes. And my ex-husband was a police officer.
Okay.
It's in the blood.
And her brother-in-law.
And my brother-in-law was a police officer.
Let me ask you a quick question about you said the first crack you ever bought was that part of the sting, or were you buying for yourself? Were you already using?
No.
That was part of the sting.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't look like a police officer.
Yeah.
So they put me in this car in some raggedy clothes, made me dig my nails in the dirt to get them dirty.
Oh, wow.
Put me in this raggedy car and told me to go buy crack. So the funniest part, right? There's these 3 black guys walking down the street, and I'm like, excuse me, hello, excuse me, trying to get their attention, and they wouldn't turn around and look at me. And the police officers could hear me, but I could not hear them, right? So I'm like, well, they didn't even look at me. And then my phone starts ringing. They're like, yo, dog, hey, brah, you cannot say, excuse me, Melissa, out here.
You're being polite.
So for the next 6 months, anytime I passed anybody at that police station, excuse me, they'd say, excuse me, they'd say. It was ridiculous. But that's a fun story. But yes. But then I did so well that the Hammond police station borrowed me to do their area. You know what I mean? And I was green, y'all. I didn't know nothing about the drug world. I was green when I was a police officer. I used to cry because the people were crying that got arrested. You know what I mean? I was really soft-hearted. I was really green. I didn't know a whole lot.
You did mention that you were married. So did you get married
We weren't really married. I say my ex because we were together for like 20 years and we had 2 kids. That's a long story too. There was a lot of trauma back then. So I got together with him when I was 19 years old and he was 32 and he was a police officer. So when my family found out about that, it was you cannot see him anymore at all. No questions, whatever.
Just based on the age difference.
And he was already arrested. I'm getting to that part.
Okay.
So they did not want me seeing him at all. I'm talking about a 3-hour fight, and until I said I couldn't see him, I couldn't leave the living room, right? But I was living in an apartment in college, so it's not even like I was living there. So I told them what they wanted to hear. I went on with my life.
And in the relationship.
Yes. So he was a Kenner police officer, and he had a friend come down from out of state that he was in a military with and grew up with. And he knew, he said, Melissa, this guy's up to no good. He's going to stay here, go to his parades, do what he wants. We're not going to have anything to do with him. But the FBI was watching him already. And
was your husband using?
No. He was a police officer.
Okay.
So he was really good back then. He used to get mad when I smoked weed back in high school or college. I guess it was college. And so he would get mad when I smoked weed. You know, he was not using it at all. So they arrested, the guy went to go send some money back to where he was from. And my ex was standing in the video camera when he sent the money. So he got conspiracy to money laundering after the fact. I was I was like 5 months pregnant with my oldest son, and he didn't come home until he was 11 months old. Oh. It was some of the hardest times of my life. That was really, really hard. I was a kid. I was still in college. I was working on the weekends.
And now you have a child.
I had to move back home because I had a kid.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so slow on the uptake here, but so his friend gets arrested, but your husband also gets arrested?
Yeah, a whole bunch of people got arrested.
But your husband in the mix as a conspirator to this all. Oh, interesting. Yes. Okay.
So he lost his job as a police officer.
Yeah.
He went to Leavenworth, Kansas, and like the satellite camp or whatever, the federal satellite camp that they had. He was treated really well up there, but he was gone all that time. Yeah. They let him come home for a furlough or whatever it was called because I was christening the baby back then, you know, and it was strange. It was a weird little experience, but it was really hard to have the baby, send him money, make sure he had everything he needed, you know what I mean? Work, pay for daycare, pay for diapers. No, my mom and dad were there. I would never go without, you know, but I did. I was always responsible, you know what I mean? I wanted to
provide for your child.
Absolutely. And still, he said. So when he came home, he was very depressed. He was very, very depressed. He started working as a manager at Copeland's. All he wanted to do was be a police officer. He was a military police before that. He had that thing.
And he lost that.
And he lost that, and it took everything from him. And so when he started working for Copeland's as a manager, there was a lot of drugs there, y'all. Yeah. And we tried ecstasy a few times, and it was very recreational. Nobody was addicted. It might have happened maybe 4 or 5 times a year. It wasn't something that we did all the time. And then the next thing you know, cocaine comes along, and same thing. Take it or leave it. We partied sometimes when we didn't have the kids. If we had the kids, we didn't.
Were you still working as a police officer?
No. Okay. No, I got offered a job at Kathryn's, which is a clothing store. Yeah. A plus-size clothing store.
Yeah, spelled with a C.
Making $40,000 a year as opposed to the $28,000 a year that I was making working as a police officer. Now, my degree's in marketing, so I want to be in sales and something like that. I never thought I'd sell plus-size clothes, but I love that job. I love those women, and I love that job. It became my heart. But when I couldn't, you know, Katrina had just happened. My youngest son went to school. It was time for me to go to work, and I couldn't find a job because the city was destroyed. And my brother-in-law, same one that's still in the police department, was like, just go take the civil service test. Just go take it. Just go take it. So I go and take it, and a month later they call you to do this fitness thing. And I never wanted to be a police officer. That wasn't a dream of mine. It was just somewhere to be until I could find something.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize a major podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, your go-to option for decluttering and giving back. If you have a closet bursting at the seams or a garage that's seen better days, we've got the perfect solution for you.
That's right. America's Thrift Stores makes it easy to clear out the clutter and make a positive impact in your community. Whether you're cleaning out your wardrobe, downsizing your living space, or just looking to give back, America's Thrift Stores has you covered.
And here's the best part. You've got options. Schedule a hassle-free home pickup, drop off your items at one of their convenient donation sites, or swing by an America's Thrift Store to donate in person. No matter which way you choose, you're making a difference.
Absolutely. Every donation you make to America's Thrift Stores directly benefits charities in your area, such as the Home of Grace and other fantastic organizations dedicated to helping those in need.
For example, donations made to America's Thrift Stores in southern Mississippi help the Home of Grace provide support and assistance to individuals facing drug and alcohol addiction. Your contributions make a real impact on their mission to provide freedom from addiction through Christ-centered recovery. So not only are you decluttering your life, but you're also helping build a stronger and more supportive community.
It's truly a double blessing. So what are you waiting for? Clean out that closet, clear out that garage, and make a positive difference in your community by donating to America's Thrift Stores.
Visit America's Thrift Stores online to schedule a home pickup, locate a donation site near you, or get directions to one of their store locations.
America's Thrift Stores, where giving back never goes out of style.
What's interesting, though, about that to me, and we haven't gotten to the darkest parts of your story yet, I'm sure, but what's interesting is that as a police officer doing undercover work in that world, you actually saw the dark underbelly of it before you actually get there, which is kind of interesting, right? It didn't...
Right, because even when we're like partying or whatever, it's not that.
Right.
It's not what I saw out
you're,
there, right?
You're just,
So one day, the lady that we used to buy cocaine from doesn't have cocaine, but has crack cocaine. And we don't even know how to use it, but we're half crack drinking. And we're like, okay, let's try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Off to the races.
One time, y'all, Angel started singing. I'm an overly caring person. I care about everybody and everybody's problems and what's going on. When I smoked crack, I didn't give a nothing about anything, right?
Yeah.
I did not care about anything. It was like this, you know? And immediately I wanted to feel like that all the time. Immediately.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't come out so hard, like, oh, I'm gonna do it. I fought it, you know what I mean? But I remember the next day, my husband going to work, my ex going to work, and then I left and went and got some more while he was gone. You know what I mean? Like that immediate.
At that point, you had to already.
I've never bought a drug in my life until I did that. It was always him, you know?
Yeah.
And it completely took control of my life.
You know, you say something so profound there, just writing it down because I want to make sure I highlighted that. You know, you talk about angels singing, and I get that, right? It just felt so right. But boy, immediately we see the darkness of the trap, right? Because you're saying, I used to care about everybody, right? I was always into their stories. The minute this happened, angels sang, but it was really it became all about me.
It absolutely did. I didn't care about my kids or what they had going on.
Yeah.
And y'all, I was the best mom in the world before this, right?
Yeah.
I was vice president of Booster Club at the park for years. Like, you went in my living room and there was nothing but jerseys all over for the next season coming up, making sure everything's sized and ordered, and working the concession stand and room moms. There was never a contest that my kids had that they didn't win. You know what I mean? Selling chocolate, whatever it is. Like, we were going and we were getting, and, you know, my oldest son had a little weight problem in order to carry the ball when he was young. And so we're running down the street in garbage bags, and we're sitting in an attic trying to sweat it all out right before the game. Like, when I tell y'all I was this crazy psycho, my kids are going to be great mom, right? And all that.
Well, what I love is you've still retained some of that wonderful energy, right? Even now,
But all that went out the window. You know what I mean? Like, I was in rehab for ball games.
Well, how did you what did that look like when you're now smoking crack?
Okay, so I have never been an everyday user. I can't. I tried with him one time and I couldn't keep up. But I've never been an everyday user, so I would get this click that happened, and I would leave for a couple days, and then I'd come home, and my come home might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, it might be a month, it might be 3 or 4 months, because never in my life did I think, oh, this is who I'm gonna be, right? Every time I did it, it was the last time I'm gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
Like never did I say, oh, this is just a way of life for me now. There was a point in my story when I did that, but that was way later on, and I would disappear for a week. The longest I've ever left at the same, no, I can't say that because I left like 3 weeks with you. But the longest I ever left by myself to go do that was about a week, right? I couldn't hang any more than that because I didn't eat, I didn't sleep. Like, so people that are, what I've seen is people that do drugs like that, they do them and then they go to bed at nighttime and then the next day they do some more and then they go to bed at nighttime and the next day I wouldn't sleep. So when I went out there, I went so hard, right? I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't sleep.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to do. And I'm
What's
gonna
a
do
crack binge?
I'm going to do as much as I can because I know I'm never coming out here again.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
How long did that
Justifying.
last?
I had a lot more clean time than I had using time. But it would last until I went to rehab, and then I get a few months, and then I go to rehab, and then I get a few months. Then I go to rehab. Then I went to Teen Challenge where I met him. I had 6 months. You know what I mean?
How many? We're flashing ahead. We're going to come back. How many rehabs do you end up going through altogether?
6 or 7.
6 or 7. So does this behavior that you're wrapped in now, this cycle, does this ultimately what ends the marriage or the relationship you're currently in?
My ex with my ex? No. So we had stayed up snorting coke or smoking crack all night long. And he was sleeping and I'm just looking at him and I'm like, what am I doing, y'all? What am I doing in my life? Like, this is disgusting. I don't want to live like this anymore. And it was right before Christmas. And he woke up and he looked at me. He's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I think I need to go to mom and dad's for a little while. And they were only 3 blocks from where we lived, right? And I left and went to my mom and dad's. And for like the first 6 months, he was really mean and angry and not nice. But when I moved in with my parents, I had this automatic babysitter, right? So it got worse. Not only did it get worse because I moved in with mom and dad, but I loved that man. Like, we had problems towards the end, and it was probably because of the drugs. And I remember telling him one time, I don't care how miserable you are, I don't care how miserable I am, those kids will have their parents for the rest of their lives together. Like, they will be, I don't care. We made this bed. Why are they going to suffer because we can't get along? We're going to find a way to just coexist. I remember saying that in my heart. So when I left, like, I was devastated because I knew I could never go back. Like, I can't go back, but I was devastated for my children.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to grow old with that man. You know what I mean? All this stuff. And although I chose to leave, I was completely devastated. And that probably didn't help neither. And my addiction got way worse. Probably about 6 months into us not talking or whatever, like, we'd sit on opposite sides of the bleachers at the ballpark. It was really sad. It was really sad. And then one day he came over and he said, I'm tired of being angry. I'm taking the boys to eat. Do you want to come? And I went. And since that day, we have been really good friends. Really, like today.
That's interesting.
Today there's not a holiday that he's not at my sister's for.
Yeah.
So he's sober as well?
Yes.
You don't know?
Maybe.
Okay, maybe. All right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But he's there for my kids.
Yeah.
He's there for us whenever we need something. He goes and gets people when I need him to go get people and bring them a certain place. Like, he's a really good person, but just not a really great husband.
Yeah.
Y'all have found something that works for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, just a quick side note, you say you don't know if he's sober or not. And I think that makes a good point, right? This
Right.
podcast and
He's
addiction
not an
isn't about demonizing those who are, right? It's
Right.
They're oftentimes, more often than not, they're good people stuck in a bad lifestyle. Some of them are bad people in a bad lifestyle, but we have bad people in good lifestyles too. So it's more often than not, it's good people in a really destructive lifestyle.
And I think he's just alone and stuff like that. So I know he goes out and has fun with his friends or whatever. But, okay, so after I went to Teen Challenge, I thought I would go back to my mom and dad's house, right?
So the Teen Challenge visit that you met.
Yes.
Okay, Mark. Okay.
Yes.
And
So
you were
I
there
thought
for a year?
Yeah. So I thought when I finished there, I would go back to my mom and dad's house, right? And he said, no, the kids have been without you long enough. You're coming to live with us, okay? We had separate bedrooms. We were never romantically involved again. He was my biggest enabler, y'all.
Yeah.
So I would leave and I'd come back and I'd leave and I'd come back. You know what I mean? And he would never, ever tell me no. It wasn't until he finally said no. Like, I would sell my cell phone to the crack dealer and he, knowing that Roland was going to go back and buy it back, right? Yeah. He would give me that much in drugs and then Roland would always go buy it back, you know? So that was the first thing I did because I didn't want the phone. People are going to be calling off the roof, you know what I mean, and crazy. So I don't want the phone. So the first thing I do before I even spend money is get rid of that phone knowing that Roland would go buy it back. He just enabled me. He just enabled me. And he tried, y'all. He really tried. He would sleep in the threshold of the door when I was really struggling. He'd sleep at the threshold of the door so I couldn't get out. Always found out. He eventually had to go to work, you know. He took my cell phone, my keys, everything.
Very codependent stuff, yeah.
Very, very. But it wasn't a romantic thing anymore, y'all. Right. It really wasn't.
Right.
You know, like, I was the mother of his kid, and it was his responsible to take care of me, you know? He became more like my dad.
Yeah.
When I came back from Teen Challenge, he just became more like my dad.
Yeah.
You know? And I was grateful for him, but it wasn't until he said, no, you're not coming back in here, and I didn't have anywhere to go, that I decided to do something different.
So what number was Teen Challenge in your 6 or 7 treatments? Was
I think 3 or 4.
3 or 4. Yeah. And Mark, same question. How many treatments did you go through before?
There was a lot. We're talking 16, 17 places. I didn't keep count.
Up into the double digits. So how do you guys meet at Teen Challenge? What happens this year?
I ended up staying there as intern staff, and I was fighting a legal case in Louisiana, and they really helped me out with that. So I stayed a little longer than I was supposed to. I think I was there for almost 2 years, and became their fundraising manager and did, I got to learn to be a leader. That's where I learned how to do most of the stuff that I do was at Teen Challenge.
He was my choir director.
I was a choir director too.
Wow.
We've had one conversation.
Wore many hats.
The whole time we were in Teen Challenge, and it was me telling him he has a word in the wrong spot. You can't expect us to get this right until you move this word.
But that was the closest interaction you had was choir director.
That was it.
Choir singer.
That was it.
So how do you reconnect after that? Because
his son passed away, and I had to bring that girl.
That's where that comes. Okay, that's right.
And you were living in transition or treatment at that time?
I just opened my first sober living home, and I was living there as a house leader until we could find somebody to live there.
Yeah.
He started calling a few weeks later.
My ex's mom had kind of told me about Melissa and what she was doing in Covington, and it sounded a lot like the direction I wanted, because we were talking about doing the same thing in Denham, when Covington sounded a lot better because I was from Denham.
Yeah.
And it just worked out. Yeah.
Is that where y'all were at in Denham, Louisiana?
No,
Where'd y'all go to Teen Challenge?
I'm from Central. I grew up in Central, which is outside of Baton Rouge.
Okay.
Teen Challenge is in the woods in Winfield. Like, you end up on a farm up there, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was in Shreveport, living in Oxford, and I had just opened that first girls' house when we first started conversating on the phone.
Yeah, that was when I went to prison for 3 years. And when I got out of prison, my son passed away.
Let's jump back to you so I can catch up there. So we know that you're working. We left off where you left after the relationship.
Yeah. What happened after that?
Okay. I started working for my dad some at that point. My dad was in the oil business, so he was in control of several little small operations. He would keep me busy. At 18, I found my first plant job. I was making really, top of the line money, living
which is not a great scenario for someone using to make top of the line.
Yeah, and everywhere I went, I found a new drug. I was on meth for a long time. I was on heroin for a long time. I was on cocaine for a long. Like, everywhere I would go, I would find some new mixture and ruin my life and start over again somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's just stayed jumping around with no consistency whatsoever.
So, what takes you to prison?
Crystal meth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I was driving had been up for days. I got pulled over. It was like if I needed to go to jail. I felt ready to go. It was over with. You know.
In retrospect, do you see that as a blessing?
Yeah, it was.
Were you manufacturing it or something? Is that
no? Really, I was down at that point. I had done made it down to like very minimal junkie level, like just getting as much as I could get with what money I had. You know.
Okay. All right. So you go to prison for 3 years?
Yes, sir.
You said? Okay. And then is Teen Challenge on the other side of prison? Is that what happens when you leave prison?
No, Teen Challenge was before I went to prison.
Before prison, right.
Teen Challenge is where I learned how to be a leader.
Yeah.
How many years ago
And
was that?
we're talking
12,
years.
13 years ago.
Yeah, because I was 30. You know, we're talking, I went to prison before me and her got married, a year before me and her got married. I had been out for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So got married when we started dating.
When we started dating, it was 2 years before we got married.
And so you had a son. When did you have him? And is that the only one?
In between. So I would work at Exxon, and I was staying at O'Brien. I had jumped around from place to place. Anything I could do to get the job that I wanted. Like I would figure out a way to manipulate the situation to where I could get this job and work this and make the most amount of money I could get so that the relapse would be longer and bigger at the end, because that's what it turned into every single time. But that was somewhere around 27 years old, I think. I had Brendan. His mom I met at an AA meeting. We didn't date. It was just a hookup, and we ended up trying. We moved in together for a little while. It turned into even worse.
Right.
But we loved him. She loved him, and it was a really tough part of my story. Yeah, because after prison, I had finally. My head was on straight for the first time in a long time. I knew that I could do it. I could be his dad. I could take care of Elizabeth. I could do, what I needed to do in life. And then just like out of the blue, one day he was gone. And that was everything up prison. Like this whole time, that's what I'm preparing for. I'm not worried about girls. I'm not worried about anything except being his dad. And
how long after you get out did that happen?
It was about 8 or 9 months, I think.
So
maybe
you had
a year.
8 or 9 good months with him.
I did.
Yeah.
That was the last. I got pictures from it, fishing and going to the camp and stuff. He was 6.
And what happened, if I can ask?
So he was in the backyard of the mother of my child's house, and they were playing on a lawnmower trailer, and he got onto the lift gate where you drive it was probably in an up position, we figured, and he climbed up the back of it, and they had pulled the pins out, so when it fell over, it instantly killed him. And I was in Shreveport working for an iron company, and I got a call on a Sunday, and I knew I was already I was praying, looking through the windshield, trying to look up to heaven. I'm the way they said it, I just knew it wasn't good. And when I got to the parking lot of the hospital, I saw trucks that I knew didn't belong together. I knew who they were, and it was uncles and pastors and different people that, and I knew he was gone when I saw I collapsed in the parking lot. They brought me in there. I cursed God. I cursed everybody in there. I was furious. I did not want to talk to anybody. The only emotion I had was anger.
Yeah.
And does this quickly bring you back to the doorstep of using? Or?
So I made it to the funeral. I'd taken some anxiety medication to make it through those few days. I had some people really keep me on the rails because I had already missed an uncle's funeral that killed himself because of drugs. And, I would have never done that in my right mind. So I stayed at my grandfather's house. I made it all the way to the funeral. And the night after the funeral, when I went to go back to Shreveport, I tried to do enough drugs to kill myself. I was everything I could get my hands on. I had plenty of money saved up, and
that was your plan.
Everything was new to me. I had a fresh tolerance for everything, and it lasted 24 hours. I was on my hands and knees in the same emergency room, going to Essen Lane to check in. The drug dealer's wife talked me into going to detox when she saw what was going on because they were fixing to take everything I had. And I made it into that detox, and they kept me for 2 weeks there, which is more than what Medicaid pays for. But they couldn't release me because of the shape I was in mentally. I was a wreck.
Mark, I can't express how sorry I am. It goes without saying I am a father of an 11-year-old, and I know that's something that is difficult. For the purpose of this discussion, I am curious how because here you are, a man of God, somehow you have reconciled with all of those things in your head, right? I mean, not that it ever becomes a pleasant memory, but we do reconcile somehow, and you've done that.
Yeah, and God has pulled me out of such a different mindset into a whole new life. And I watched a movie called Collateral Beauty one time and had Will Smith in it, and it really made me think of everything that after he was gone, and Melissa being one of those, people, and it's mostly people that are in my life now that are the only reason that I'm here. Yeah. And God really shined down and gave me some purpose and a lot of grace in a lot of situations and put me on a different path. We have a grief group. We haven't met in a while. I'm still struggling with this. It's up and down. And I ended up back here in Home of Grace, on the same note, but it absolutely, it's something that I have learned to be able to. I couldn't talk about it for a couple of years. It got to the point where I could talk about it, and then I met a girl that was in our houses, and she had a 2-year-old child that the boyfriend shook to death while she was out using, and it wasn't even his kid, it was her. And me and her got to talking, and she told me, she said, when I hear your story and I see that you're whole, like, it gives me hope that I can do this. And I had never thought of myself as whole. Like, we were just getting started in sober living. Like, we didn't know if it was going to work. Like, every other week it was another problem. We didn't know if we were going to make it. And this girl said, when I see you, it makes me know that I can make it. And I knew that was just God shining down, through our lives and what we were doing, because all we were doing was helping people. That's it. All we did was help people from off the side of the road, from Walmart, jail, whatever the situation was. We did what we could. We couldn't always do the financial things, but we always helped these people. And most of the ones that ended up with us and stayed with us, which wasn't all of them by any means, they became our really good friends. And these groups got started, and so many different things came from that. And I think of Brendan, when I see some of these different stuff, it all spiraled from that trauma.
Before we go any further, let's take a minute to address the man or the woman listening to today's episode and wishing for a better life. Or maybe addiction has completely overtaken a family member or a friend.
You are not alone. As you may know, the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast is produced by the Home of Grace, a Christ-centered addiction recovery program in South Mississippi with over 60 years of experience.
The Home of Grace has residential programs ranging from 30 days to 12 months. With 2 separate campuses for men and women, they are fully staffed with caring individuals who want nothing more than to guide you to a life of recovery.
Services include individual and group counseling, marriage and family counseling, classes, workshops, GED, and workforce training, all grounded in biblical principles.
And because of donations from the community, the cost of the program is incredibly affordable.
Thousands of alumni from across the country can tell you there is no other program in the world quite like the Home of Grace.
If you want to start a new path to recovery, don't wait. Speak with an admission specialist today. Visit homeofgrace.org or call 833-55-GRACE to talk with someone.
That's 833-55-GRACE. Call the Home of Grace today. It's amazing, right? You think of that beauty from ashes, and it's hard to...
Because if his son wouldn't have just died, I would have never responded to that Facebook message. He was not.
We were on a different level as far as my girlfriends were way different than Melissa when I was.
I would have never responded. I felt sorry for him, and I'm like, oh my God, he needs a friend.
I'm going to be his friend.
And then he dug his claws in.
So tell us about that part. How does the romance begin?
Oh, it was ridiculous. It was like puppy love or like something you would do in high school. It was so ridiculous.
You're both in recovery at this point?
Oh, yeah.
You're running
a year and a half sober. He had over a year except for that 24 hours, you know what I mean? Which I don't.
It was 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, he had a long time sober and he had really been working on himself.
Yeah.
And he did have that little slip, but I can't tell
Which
you
was
something
more
happened
really
to one
a
of my
suicide
kids.
attempt
Right.
than a relapse.
Right.
I mean, that's,
And so,
Yeah.
so his Facebook message said, "Is that your son or your boyfriend in that profile picture?"
smooth.
Yeah, I'll see that. Right. And I'm like, really? You know what I mean? And he started and he started with, I've heard a little bit about what you're doing. I've always wanted to do that, kind of thing. And, it was very a little bit back and forth. And he said, "Can I call you?" And I said, "Yeah." And we talked for a few minutes that time. And then he called one time and we stayed on the phone for 4 hours. I remember he said, "I got to go to the gym." And he's driving up to the gym and he just sat in a gym parking lot and we just talked. And it was really just talking about what's been going on in your life, right? Could have lasted way longer than 4 hours. I think we were both walking into an AA meeting.
Did y'all both remember having the brief interaction as the choir director?
Oh, God, yes.
Okay.
We've brought that up.
We knew,
yeah.
we knew who each other were. You know what I mean? And he was kind of arrogant back then.
He
was
arrogant. I was a little cocky. Yeah.
He was cocky. He was cocky back then. And
Well, you were a student in the program.
Right. Yeah. And he was cocky. And one of the little girls in my cabin, because we lived in cabins back then, one of the little girls in my cabin was so in love with Mark. And I'm like, my God, what do you see in that man? It was like that.
Yeah.
Not a chance, And it's like I say,
here we sit.
Yeah.
Right.
God
he
works
told me
in mysterious
2
ways.
weeks after we were talking on the phone that we were getting married. And I'm like, you're crazy. And here's the deal. I never really been in a relationship.
there.
I mean, a little bit.
All that happened with Roland.
We neither one had a real relationship or been married, really.
Yeah.
Ever.
In a long time.
When we realized we could have it, it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
So Roland kind of became my dad, and I think he felt responsible for me because we started using together. I got addicted and he didn't. He's not an addict, you know what I mean? By all means. And so I think he really felt bad about that, and that's why he took care of me all those years, And then when I went to Baton Rouge for my last rehab,
I feel like you were going to say something.
My second to last.
Probably not going to say what I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good thinking, babe.
Yeah.
So
it was more of a codependency issue than him wanting to take care. He had a hard time letting go of Melissa. She was a really good friend to him and did a lot for him, and he had a really hard time letting go.
we're still really good friends, and you're really good friends with him too.
Well, yeah. Absolutely.
We're all really good friends.
Yeah.
When we go on a family vacation, the whole family, he's there. At Christmas, he's there. At Thanksgiving, he's there. On Sundays or Tuesdays or whenever we go to my sister's house, he's there. You know what I mean? So his family his dad died when he was younger, and then his mom just recently died, and his brother lives in Florida. So for 25 years, however long it's been, my family's been his family.
Right.
And that didn't change because I got married, because that was all going on then,
Yeah.
And for the most part, we all get along very well. Right?
Right.
For the most part.
And most of the time it's for the kids, you know what I mean? What I wanted for my kids still happened even though I wasn't in a relationship with this man, right?
And in spite of you and the things that you did.
Yes, he
still
took
happened.
very well care of them.
Yeah.
They never missed a football practice or a football game or anything when I was gone. It all still happened. He stepped up to the plate. And he wasn't as involved as I was. Practice, that was no big deal to him. He never went. sometimes you didn't even get him to go to a game. Oh, there'll be another one. That's not me. I was the psycho one that had to be at everything. And then when I couldn't, he did. You know, when I couldn't be there, or I was in treatment, or I was out using, he made sure those boys got and went to everywhere they needed to, you know?
Yeah.
My sister, too, when I was in Teen Challenge for that year, their dad was a manager at a place in Lafayette. The kids were too young to go to Lafayette with him, because he worked a lot of nights and stuff on weekends. So they went and lived with my sister for a year, you know, and she just really helped me out a whole bunch too, you know.
Yeah.
The kids didn't suffer like some kids would suffer with their mom being an addict. Well, I know they missed me and it hurt them, but they still...
Well, and I think in your shoes and doing what you do, you've seen how bad it could have been for your children.
Yes.
And that makes you super grateful, even more so when you realize and
one
accept.
has his master's degree in addiction counseling. He works at our center. Well, the other
awesome.
one has a degree. He's working at our center.
Yeah.
Like, her kids are super successful.
Yeah. They know more about that place than I do. It's
absolutely.
great.
They will be the future of it.
Yeah. I am eternally grateful that my children didn't go through what some of the children are. So I can hear the gratitude. Like, that's an awareness that you can't buy.
They're amazing. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Me too. So,
in spite of sometimes,
you know what I mean? So my oldest one played football at Millsaps. That was probably one of the best 4 years of my life. Like, we went.
She loved football.
Oh, it was crazy football mom, right? Like, screaming,
Jumping
yelling. I mean,
crazy,
like, Mark's like, you're embarrassing me. Can you sit down? I'm like, no, don't touch me again during this, right? And somebody would call because we had a lot going on. And he's like, don't you know she's at a football game? Do you want her to kill you? Don't call back till tomorrow. You know, like crazy stuff like that, just for fun. But I was all about it, and we went to every game that was out of town. We went to every game that was in town. Like, I dressed up, I painted faces. Like,
did you have to paint your face?
We colored his beard purple one time or something like that. Like, he had to play along. He had to play along.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Happy wife, happy life. So are the relapses done for you at this point? Are you sober from this point on in your story, like where you are, or is there something?
No.
Okay.
No. I had houses and relapsed. So Mark and I got married. And this one was my fault. We got married, and on our honeymoon, I thought I deserved a glass of wine in the hot tub. I worked my butt off. I like red wine.
I earned it.
Yes. I worked my butt off. It's my wedding. It's snowing outside, and there's a hot tub right there, and I deserve. And he said,
just a glass
you know what he
of
told
wine.
me? Right. He said, you think about that for 24 hours, and if you want it tomorrow, you'll get it. And I wanted it, and we went and got it. And we relapsed on our honeymoon. Came back days later than we should have. But they kept that one real hush-hush, right? Like, it was just...
So that one drink turned into...
Oh, God.
Y'all did days.
Yeah.
So bad. It was so bad. So bad. So,
it was a lightweight for me. For her, it was a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I was the years guy, and she was a weekend warrior. So
So I kept saying,
felt
we're going
like I did
home, we're
good for
going home,
stopping her.
we're going home, we're going home. And he'd be like, we're going home tomorrow, we're going home. Everything to Mark is tomorrow. Oh, it drives me nuts. And it never comes. Everything for Mark is tomorrow. Like, we'll take care of that tomorrow, you know? And so we finally went home, but it was just like between my mom and dad, my sister, and his mom. Like, the kids didn't even know, you know? Yeah. And we kept it real hush-hush, and Mark struggled. Like, we opened up a door of monsters for Mark. You know what I mean?
I was on the road working.
So he just continued. And then, so this is still happening, right? And he would try to stop and get a little bit of time, but he never really...
Good for a little while, yeah.
He never really got, you know, he never was really done. And then he came to where I was working, because I always had little side jobs before it got big. And he came to where I was working, and he said, okay, I want to do this. I want to work it out, all this other kind of stuff. And it was Christmas Eve. And I said, Mark, it's Christmas Eve. I'm going to spend Christmas Eve with the boys and Christmas Day with the boys, and I will get in contact with you.
Are you guys separated at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so his continued drinking caused you guys to...
I had to, because I kept relapsing with them. You know what I mean? Like, 4th of July, we relapsed for the day. You know what I mean? And it was just this little stuff like I like, but he wouldn't stop, and we couldn't stop together. So it was
You had
pretty
to
bad.
separate.
So you left
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Was there an ultimatum?
He left me.
Oh, really?
He left me. He was going to all these jobs everywhere, moved in with some girl. Like, yeah, he left me.
Okay, so your addiction took over not just chemically, but relationship-wise. You were just...
It takes over everything.
Yeah, you're gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as far as the cheating part, I did that first just to say. And I told him about it because he kept asking. And I'm like, he must know. So I just told him about it and he didn't know.
Yeah.
And he just really went off then. You know what I mean? But there
You
was...
hurt me, I'm going to hurt you the same way.
Now,
And
were
more.
you using when that happened?
No, I was just hurt.
Just hurt, okay.
I was just hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was in St. Croix working, and it was like Cocaineville. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. Worst idea in the world to go down there, and the shape
we
I
knew
was
it.
in, and I couldn't make it to my plane ticket. They were fixing they didn't know what to do because I bought 3 or 4 in a row and could not make it to the airport. Like, it was bad.
So there he wants a divorce. I'm cheating. He hates me. I was never
That's
good
not
for him.
the order of that, but
It is. You said all that to me. You said all that to me.
Okay.
And I was really hurt. Like, I was really hurt. And I knew he was using up there, and I was trying to be good, right? We had both gotten out of... What happened was, we had both just gotten out of treatment. He went to Fontainebleau in Mandeville, and I went to the Grove in Baton Rouge. Well, I wanted to do their IOP. So I was going to move in there sober living and continue and do their IOP and then come home, right? And I wanted him to stay there and do IOP there and us meet up, but like really like just small steps, right? And well, of course I wanted to stay up there because I wanted to cheat on him. So he's going to St. Croix, which wasn't the case at all. It wasn't the case at all. And once he got to St. Croix, you know, as soon as he uses, I'm just accused of everything and the worst person in the world. And he was doing all that, and he was up there, and there was nothing I could do about it, y'all. And I was just heartbroken, and I made a bad decision. Yeah. You know what I mean? I did. It made me feel better, right? I'm not gonna go use drugs, but that's just as bad, right?
Yeah.
Spiritually, it's even worse. But it was that instant gratification of I can't sit in this pain, right?
Well, and there's the common denominator, right? It's just another drug because it's just another form of instant gratification, kind of a wrongful way to satisfy a pain. Yeah,
absolutely. And then it was so bad. It was all so bad, y'all. It really was. So he, from St. Croix, he just kept dropping from job to job to job to job. Then he tells me that he's going to Oklahoma. Where did I come get you from? Chicago. I'm going to Chicago. I said, Mark, we all know it's not going to work. Like, he might have just got out of detox or something like that because he kept going to detox. And he says, I'm going to Chicago. I said, that's fine, but if something happens in Chicago, I am not coming to get you. I will not come up there. You hear my words, I will not come up there and get you. And after the 3rd hospitalization, I just thought he was going to kill himself. So I flew to Chicago and got him. And so that's when things were right for a really long time, for about 4 years.
So you went to Chicago and then you came back to Louisiana. You're sober. You're working a program.
You had to go to detox. You had to go to
detox. And I did IOP.
Oh, this was a good story. So I thought he needed to go back to Teen Challenge. We're fighting on the way home about him going to Teen Challenge for a year or going to the 30-day program. And I was very, very angry. I was so angry. And so I was like, you need to go to Teen Challenge. And he's like, no, I don't. All I need to do is 30 days. So we're fighting. So I said, okay, biblically, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to go to our pastor and sit down with him and let them make the decision. I said, no matter what they say, just knowing they were going to say a year, no matter what they say, we both have to be okay, whether he's going for 30 days or a year, no questions asked. So we get there and we're sitting with the pastor and we're talking about it. I'm fighting my point and he's fighting his point. And the pastor said, Mark doesn't have to go anywhere. He knows what to do. So now I got to call my parents who are heavily involved in my life and tell them the pastor said he didn't have to go anywhere after all of this stuff, right? So they're losing their mind. They're mad at me. My sister's mad at me. But I really had to do what the pastor said, which was nothing. And it was very hard because I just didn't trust him. I didn't trust that he was going to make right decisions. It was right during COVID. So everybody are getting these $800 checks, right? So that's when he started. He got psycho. He sat there. He didn't need to go to work at the time. I really needed him to work on his recovery. So he was going to IOP, and he started making that True Freedom group during that COVID time. And it kept him very busy.
Got involved in helping others.
And I was like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time doing all that. You know what I mean? But
and do you still have houses at this time, like recovery houses?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So my sister is part owner of some of them with me, and then Mark has some, and she just took over. You know what I mean?
And are you sober at this time, or you are?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So, yeah. That was it. That was it.
That was it for you.
He had that one little relapse in coming home from Alaska. You know, you heard how he was chasing jobs, the most money you can make. Like, that did not stop until he came here. That's when we decided there's no way he could go back out of town. But we knew that God was already calling him to be home. We knew that it was out of God's will if he went out of town and worked.
I hadn't worked in over a year when I went to Alaska. They offered me $5,000 a week, and it was a plush oil field job, and got a truck, $50 an hour.
Yeah.
It all sounded really good, except for someone like you.
Yeah. No, it was, I did good on the first hitch, came home, and went back on the second one in the airplane. They pass out alcohol, Crown Royal on the plane. So
and he wasn't spiritually sound at that time because he had
But it was short-lived. I hurried up and got home. When I realized what I was doing, I shook it off, and that's never happened for me before.
Yeah.
And then I, decided.
There was a lot of growth in that. There was a lot of growth in how quickly he came back.
And you chose to go to treatment at Home of Grace.
Yeah. I had been here before.
Okay.
My grandfather actually helped Mr. Bill start Home of Grace a long time ago.
Did not know that.
That's neat.
And I was asking Mark at that time, please step up. I need a spiritual leader. He's going on all these things. He's not, you know what I mean? Like I was out there wilding out in the world without my covering, you know what I mean? And I felt it, y'all. I felt it, and it was miserable. Like, I need my covering. I need my spiritual leader to be okay to do what I do, you know? And we're having these conversations, and I'm praying to God, please, God, just let him get back on track. You know, he's out of town working. He's not in his Bible at all. He's not going to church. He's not going to any kind of spiritual recovery.
Stopped doing the things that he knows he has to do.
7-12s.
Nothing. And I felt that, y'all. Like, I felt it. And so I'm praying to God, and I'm really telling him, please don't go back. You shouldn't go back. I didn't say please, because the money is good. But I'm like, Mark, I prayed about it, and we're stepping out of God's will if you go back, is what I told him.
Yeah.
I knew he wasn't supposed to go back. I believe that God gave us that first little stretch, and he was not supposed to go back. And I said that. And he's like, just one more time. And I should have said no, because he would have stayed home, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And so...
You know, I love that piece of it, though, because I often say that we too often settle for fool's gold when God's trying to offer us the real thing. And while that may seem, look, $5,000 a week, I want to talk to you afterwards, see if they want a counselor up there. But I'm kidding. Those are strong temptations, but the reality is, it's fool's gold in the timeline of eternity, right? If it's going to cause me damage, then it's not worth it. There is nothing worth, right? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his own soul? And boy, you guys came face to face with that, right? And so I love that piece of the story because it really speaks to that verse, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just needed him. It was miserable and hard without him.
Yeah.
And then I had to give him up for 90 days to come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that was really hard because I couldn't talk to him whenever I wanted. And there was so much going on that I would call him for and say, what am I supposed to hear? What am I? And I'm just like winging it out there. Like, that was a hard 3 months, you know?
Yeah.
But you saw something different this time when he came home.
I did. Well, it was when he was up here. It was really weird because Mark is a very high-strung person, right? And there was just this calmness about him. When I was up here visiting, I'm like, wow, that's so weird and so hot at the same time. You know what I mean? Like,
I love that.
Yeah. You know, and not so bouncy. Like, I don't know. Life gets us. We're both severely ADD, right?
Worked up a lot,
And we're both severely ADD, and trying to do everything we do. Like backing up a little bit. One of my best friends, you know, she knew my whole heart and soul. Like we hanging out and she's helping with the houses. And her and I met in high school. Didn't have anything to do with each other for 25 years. She saw an article about the houses and said, I want to become involved. I want to help anywhere I can. This is my heart, yada, yada. And she did. She started and she opened a recovery meeting that we all go to on Friday nights. And she knew my whole heart was to open an intensive outpatient for my clients to go to or the people in the house to go to, because I did that in every one of them. And I felt like it just made the houses healthier if you get to process 3 times a week and have a one-on-one every week and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, you do not make money on houses. I don't care who tells you do.
Mm-hmm.
You do not, okay? Because some months you'll have really, really good months, and some months you'll have really, really bad months. It kind of evens out a little bit, right? You can't live off of them, let's just say. So I felt like I was running this hamster wheel. Like, what am I doing? Because I can't do this the rest of my life and not make a living, because then I'm doing other stuff on the side to try to make money to make sure these houses work. It was a mess. And so I didn't have the money to open this IOP, you know, and we went on a little trip with her and her husband, and we had a great time. And on the way back, she's like, do you really want to open this IOP? I'm like, yes. So, I mean, she did all the legwork. She did all the red tape. Like, I didn't do anything except have to fill it when, it opened.
Yeah.
And now we have like 6 daytime groups, 6 nighttime groups.
Wow.
That is awesome.
I'm sorry, 3 daytime groups, 3 nighttime groups, a transition group, you know what I mean? A job club group. Like,
Is it faith-based or is it just whatever?
Okay.
Which is fine. I'm just curious.
Let's put it out there. The 3 owners are Christians and our counselors are Christians. Put the label faith-based on it. We could not charge their Medicaid, right?
Okay.
So there, and we could not run it. How are we going to run it without that? Because we don't have church support and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, limits. So,
excuse me. So we take them to church on Sundays if they want to go to church. We take them to Rise Up on Friday nights, and none of it is forced.
Yeah, but they still have the choice.
But we pray that, and so what happens is the people that are really responding, we have Bible study in all the houses. You're not required to go to it, but if you go to it, it counts as one of your meetings. Well, you have to get so many meetings a week and get that sign.
Right.
So a lot of times they're sitting in these things and just stuff's starting to click, right?
Yeah.
So I realized when I went to Teen Challenge that shoving it down and really requiring it is going to do one of 2 things, and it's either going to get somebody spiritually sound or it's going to turn somebody spiritually off, right? And just the opposite of what we're trying to do. So I never wanted to force it, but what happens is the people that go to church and practice these things have a different light in their eyes than the people that don't.
You're right.
And then the people that don't see it, and they're like, "Ooh, I want that." You know what I mean? So that's what we see happening, right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that too, because I think that has been forever true, right? Because there's this, you often hear people say, this is a whole podcast unto itself, so I'm going to try and do some brief, but you often hear people say, well, you know, Jesus hung out with sinners, and they're usually doing that to justify whatever they're involved in at the moment. But the reality is but the reality is that he didn't just hang out with them. If you encountered Jesus, you did one of those 2 things. You either left changed or you left doubling down on your own sin and really in trouble, right? So there was always that split. And so I think that's an interesting thing that you talk about. So just kind of in summarizing here, because we're going to have to bring this in for a landing here, in your own journeys, right? Where was your faith in all of that? Do you always consider yourselves as having been in the faith and just wandered away from it, or did it come later in your life for you? Where did that?
Absolutely wandered away from it at a young,
prodigal.
I actually went to the altar and committed to full-time ministry at like 18 years old. Like there was several big moments where stuff had happened and altar moments. And then, I went on a mission trip with a guy to Nicaragua, came back home and got back on pills. Like I kept going up and down with it, and I struggled with faith after, my son passing away for a little while, but I always knew he was there. There was so much grace and mercy involved in that situation. You could not deny it. I mean, you look at what I'm involved in, and it's like, without God, there's no equation at all, I'm fully incapable of anything that I'm involved in. But my faith has been strengthened after coming here. I got to spend, I was so wrapped up in my phone and my life. Like, I had no idea how much of that was taking control of my mind. And I got here and got rid of the phone and actually started picking up the word and reading. And it was everything. That's what I was missing, was a clear mind to read with. And once I got that, now I right now in my life, I have things that I need to move around so that I have more of that time. But I can specifically remember here down there on the creek bank at the moment that I realized my mind was clear and that phone was a weapon in my life that was fighting me. And not in a way like, even business wise, like there's so many different things that we just focus and put so much time and effort on when most of our focus and effort needs to start being on spiritual progress.
Yeah, it's easy to get sidetracked. And for you, your faith, was it also a prodigal kind of a situation, or did you come to faith late?
I was Catholic.
I was Catholic. But I mean, I always believed in God. I always knew that Jesus died on the cross for me. You know what I mean? There was no question in that. When I went to Teen Challenge is when I really encountered God. I mean, I had these little things. Like, we would go on these what conferences or something like that with school. And I would always feel that tingle, and I would always feel that presence of the Holy Spirit, you know what I mean? Like, so I knew there was something there. And ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to help people. I always wanted to help people. I asked my dad if I could join the Peace Corps after high school, and he told me when you graduate from college you could, but I had 2 kids, so I couldn't. And so I always wanted to do this, but I didn't know how. And when I finally came out on the other side of it, I'm like, oh, wow. That's why I was an addict all these years, right? Because now I can help people. Now I can do what really cheers my heart. But it wasn't until Teen Challenge that I actually,
had that encounter.
It was amazing. And I have it often now, you know what I mean? Not as often as I would like, but
that's when it changed from religion to relationship for you, right?
Exactly.
And that's huge.
Exactly.
Guys, I really want to thank you for being here and sharing your story. And, in these last few minutes, as we were talking, I thought about, there's an old saying that says, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I hear a little bit of that in the story. So, and maybe the way you guys capped that with the conversation about your faith and the prodigal, guys, our faith can look a lot like that too, that we can be well-intentioned, and consider ourselves maybe even religious, but good intention won't keep you sober. The road to the relapse is often paved with good intention. Most people, if they have any real inclination to get sober, will leave a treatment center with good intentions. Good intentions are fine. I'm not poo-pooing them, but they are not going to keep you sober. Guys, it takes discipline. It takes action. And your good intention, if you allow it, can be motivational toward that end. But please don't rest on good intention alone. Christ called us not to appreciate his words, but to live out his words, right? That's the next step. We're called to live them out. And it's in that action that we experience the freedom that Christ offers us. It's in that action that we experience the freedom from things like drugs and alcohol and the addictions that hold us down. We have to nurture that relationship. I love that piece about Melissa just shared about it in Teen Challenge, moving from a place of religion to relationship. And there's lots to be said there, more than I can possibly do in just a few moments talking about this. But please know that there is a difference. Religiosity may give you education about Christ, but only relationship will really give you
Understanding.
Yeah, the experience, the experience of Christ, right? The experience of that friendship with Christ. That really, it's just, and it's a beautiful thing. So, hopefully, I've wet your whistle on that. Like I said, there's so much to be. We could do a whole hour just on that, But choose this day. I want to challenge those of you who consider yourself of the faith. Choose this day one more thing that you're willing to do to step into a closer, more active relationship with Him. Just one thing today that you'll do differently today or tomorrow and the next day, and incorporate that in your journey.
Or something you'll let go of.
Yeah. Oh, that's good too. So, guys, listen, we love you. Jesus loves you. And we can't wait to see you next time. Thank you so much again, Mark and Melissa.
Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you for having us.
God bless you. Take care.